Tim Linder here. Let's talk about bringing in typography from Photoshop and or Illustrator. So I'm going to go ahead and get into After Effects. I'm going to double click on my project here and I'm going to select type.psd. This is a Photoshop document and I am going to bring in this Photoshop file as footage. And when I bring it in footage, you could use composition as well, but I'm going to bring this in as footage because there's just one type layer that I want to bring in here. First of all, I don't want to merge the layers. I don't want to merge the type layer with the background because I want to be able to edit it eventually. So I'm going to go ahead and choose the layer. In my Photoshop file, there's really only one layer. It's the STLCC Merrimack layer, and I'm going to open that. I'm going to bring this in as footage, choosing the layer, not merged, and I'm going to bring it in. This way, when I bring that type layer from Photoshop into my document, and I'm going to go ahead and create a new composition here, and I drag that piece of footage in, or that layer from Photoshop, I actually can change it to where I can edit it. Right now I can't necessarily edit it, and in fact, if I were to scale this up, let's say I zoom way in, I run into the issue where it gets really blurry. It's all pixelated, it's a rasterized layer. I can't use my type tool over here and come and click on this, and let's say I made a spelling mistake. I can't change that right now. However, within your Photoshop file, if you bring in that layer, if you bring in that layer as a piece of footage or a composition, and that layer is separated and it was indeed a type layer inside of Photoshop, what you can do is you can go up to layer and then convert to editable text. And when I do that, you'll notice the lines get nice and smooth. I can use my type tool and I can come in and highlight any of these letters, and I can make changes to the leading, tracking, spelling, change the font, whatever I want to do. And as I scale it up, it re-rasterizes and makes a nice smooth line for me. And looks really good. So if you're bringing typography in from Photoshop, that is most likely what you're going to want to do, is create the type layer. Now let's do this same file, or the same set of text. I'm going to double click and I'm going to open up an Illustrator file. Unfortunately, this is type.ai, and I'm going to bring this in as footage. In fact, I can't really do it much other than that. And the issue with bringing in type from Illustrator is that, okay, I could scale this up, and in Illustrator, indeed, remember, I can come down and choose my little gear option that makes sure that it rasterizes, or what do they call it even? Continuously rasterize this vector layer. So if I click on this gear, you'll notice as soon as I do that, my edges get nice and smooth on this Illustrator file, but I still can't come in and select and highlight and change my typography, and I don't even have that option on an Illustrator file to convert it to a type layer. So unfortunately, you're a little bit limited when you come in with Illustrator as far as changing to a type layer. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and delete this one again and go back to my Photoshop one and show you one last thing that you can do. If I bring in my type layer from Photoshop, as I did last time, notice I don't have a gear option because this wasn't a vector layer from Illustrator, so I don't even have that option. I'd have to go ahead and change it into a type layer, which I'll do. I'll go to layer, convert to editable text. And then one other thing that you can do with type, and this is regardless, even if you just create type with the type tool within After Effects, or if you convert this type to a type layer, I can then convert it from type, where it's editable with the type tool, if I want to convert it to a shapes or a mask. And we'll get into how to deal with shapes and masks a little bit later, but if I wanted to, I could go to, once I've changed it to a type layer, I can change a type layer to a shape layer, and then I can't go in with my type tool and edit spacing and things like that. But one of the things that I can do, I'm going to zoom in here a little bit, is I can double click and I can select on individual letters if I want to. If I shift click, I can select on individual points, and I can move those points around and change letter forms and things like that. And in fact, when I come down, if I wanted to go, you'll look over in my layer panel, when I change a type layer to a shape layer, it actually keeps the type layer and hides it, and it creates an additional shape layer. And within that additional shape layer, if I move open to the contents, I'll see there are shapes for every single letter. And in fact, some shapes have even more than one letter. If they've got an opening in it like an E, I've got a couple shapes in it that create the outside of the E and the whole of the E. And if I wanted to, let's say, change this L here and keyframe the changes to that L over time. I could open up the L and keyframe that path and then change that over time. Let's say I wanted to move that, hold shift here and select these individual points and move some around, and now over time I've got the motion of that path moving over time. So let's say I wanted to get rid of those. I'm going to start over. I think I kind of moved around a little bit here. So I'm going to hold shift and I'm going to select on a couple points here. Maybe I'll select these points and I want to keyframe that path, and then maybe down the line here at 1 second I want to move all of these points. Whoop, hold shift again. Select these points again and move those down here. Now I've got this animation over time moving those points. So bringing in type from Photoshop, you can change it to editable type, and then from there you can create shapes from that type, and we'll work with shape layers a little bit later in another video. But you can also, like I said, create just regular type layer from within After Effects, still edit it with my type tool, or go in and choose layer convert to shapes from that type layer that you just created inside of After Effects.